rolling countryside of Europe hides a secret. Beneath these farmlands lie graveyards, final resting place for the fallen of the First World War. No Man's Land is a group of archaeologists, forensic experts and historians. They excavate the past a shovelful at a time to preserve the memories of the shattered lives that ended here.
This is something that no one's ever seen before.
She's there, right?
Yeah, we've got it.
At Ypres in northern Belgium, they are searching for evidence of the very first trenches of the Great War.
I don't know if this is an arm or a leg. At the moment I can't see. I've got part of a ball joint.
Along the way, they discover the men who fought there and an atrocity that was committed. In the autumn of 1914, this Belgian farmland was a focus of fighting in the First World War. British, French and Belgian troops flooded in to face a vast German army. The Allies were desperate to capture the open land between the newly dug trenches in France and the coast to prevent the German army from capturing the vital Channel ports, lifeline of the British Army. It was also a battle to save the last major Belgian town in Allied hands, Ypres.
Where we are now is at a small village of Bigsote, which is north of the town of Ypres. In 1914, the Germans' plan was to take Paris within about 6 weeks, to knock out the French and then turn to their east and beat the Russians. They fail, and because of that, they start to dig in.
Andy Robertshaw is an historian with Britain's National Army Museum and a member of No Man's Land, a team of battlefield experts here to try and find evidence of the First Great War trenches and the men who fought in them. They're using geophysical surveys and wartime maps to try and locate the original trenches. Overseeing it all is archaeologist David Kenyon.
There are early aerial photographs from 1915 that show a German trench here. And we know that the site was captured by the Germans in October of 1914 during the First Battle of Ypres.
These fields are where the infamous trench war of the Great War was born. Shallow graves that would be dug deeper and become home for troops on the front line. Eventually, the Great War's trenches, if measured foot by foot, would be long enough to encircle the Earth. No Man's Land is searching for one of the first. Their research leads them to the right spot, but reveals something else: human remains.
Andy? Andy? Is that little toe?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, you got the floor.
Just, do you want to have a look first, just in, see what you think? Does this, which is I think where the impression from where the heel came, and up here in this area with those, have you seen the two pieces of bone?
Yes. Well, maybe we can remove the topsoil to about...
To about there, yeah, that might be a good idea.
The team identifies a layer of earth that appears to contain the human remains. The machine operator is instructed to carefully scrape off the topsoil just above that level. But to their horror, the spoil is full of human bones, what's left of men killed here in the fight for Ypres.
Well, what's happened is during the machining, you know, using the big bucket, the bucket has pulled up what appears to be at least one individual.
The bone's stuck in there.
Must have put it out earlier, didn't it?
Justin just found it on the spoil.
It's a mistake that shouldn't happen. No Man's Land respect the dead and retrieve human remains painstakingly by hand.
That's unfortunate, but it happens on any archaeological site. You take a decision that you'll use machines to remove plough soil. And talking to my Belgian colleagues, what surprised all of us is that there appear to be undisturbed human remains that close to the surface in an area that, as you can see, is regularly ploughed and has been since the end of the First World War.
They believe the partly excavated trench holds the remains of 2 German soldiers.
Is that all stuff up there, is it?
I don't know if this is an arm or a leg at the moment. I can't see. I've got part of a ball joint down here with some cloth on top of it. We've got, looks like part of an in-situ hand. Up here there seems to be a few fingers still together there.
Police are called whenever human remains are found, so the team need a forensic anthropologist on site fast, before police arrive to take the bones away. The first job of a forensic anthropologist is to hunt for clues to help identify human remains. Marit van den Bruener is also trying to work out how many soldiers No Man's Land has found.
So the easiest is to start with the long legs. If we see already 2 times a right femur, yeah, then we know we have 2 persons, yeah. And if they are all about the same age, then it's difficult to say which bone belongs to who.
While Marit pieces together a human jigsaw, No Man's Land uncovers more clues, remnants of the soldiers' uniforms.
The button. The brass buttons seem to have survived quite well, but there's plenty of large bits of uniform up the top here.
Luke Barber is a forensic expert with the police force back in Britain. He's a specialist in working with evidence found alongside human remains.
This, what we're wondering is whether we've actually got the best part of one body and bits of others. And if you do get someone who's been blown to pieces, then apparently one of the things that survives the best are the legs and the feet, which are in the boots. So it may well be they're picking up limbs and dumping them down and burying them all together. So it's not necessarily a simple head count, because sometimes the heads are missing completely.
Marit's examination tells her the men's age and details of their physiques. This results in an unexpected discovery. The team have found the remains of 3 men, not 2.
So what I'm trying to do now is the same bones I'm putting together. So the femurs with femurs, tibia, feet bones, arm bones. So it becomes a real puzzle. Nee, that's a hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So what can we say about these bones? I could separate 3 individuals. They were quite robustly built, and they were surprisingly not so tall. The height of this first individual, for example, is 1.65 meters. And if I compare this with myself, then it's about 10 centimeters less than me, which is in fact small for a man. I can see things on bones, but bones don't tell everything. I did my best.
More evidence is pulled out of the trench where the bones were found. Possible clues as to the regiment these soldiers came from.
What have we got?
Interesting
Yeah.
was we did get a button which we could actually see something on finally.
Yeah.
We got some with Prussian crowns, by the looks of it, but more interestingly we got this one here,
That's a numeral.
which has got a number on it. Looks
Yeah.
like number 5, I think.
That is important because that's going to be the company.
Right.
So number 5 company of the regiment itself.
That's good.
Which means that if we can do a bit of research on the divisions that came through this area, what we can then do is to work out if in the battalion or regimental history there is any mention of a map showing where number 5 company was.
Right.
Months of sleuthing paid off. German army records revealed that the button and the men who wore it came from a German regiment, the 213th Reserve. They can now track the doomed men from their training camp to their place of death. A journey they have decided to retrace themselves, a pilgrimage to gain insight into the mindset of war.
So what we've got is this. We've got a single button and a location. Doesn't seem like much, but there's plenty to go on. That's the site of our project. It's the 213 Regiment, 213 Reserve Regiment, that actually takes this area and holds it.
Right.
So our job, I suppose, is now to go into Rendsburg itself, have a look at it, and then follow the rest of their route.
Okay, let's go then.
Yeah, a couple of days.
Excellent.
We only had partial remains, so we weren't able to this time say this is a particular person, only that they came from a particular unit. So the idea of this trip is to take 3 of us, the same number as bodies that were found, and to retrace their route. Wearing their uniforms as a way of finding out what their experience could have been like. And having never been a soldier, it's a way of getting inside, I suppose, that the mind of that man.
Andy Robertshaw may never have been a soldier, but he spent his life studying armies, and he spends a great deal of time in uniform.
Shoulder, das, Gewehr.
He wants the journey they're planning to run with military precision.
No, try and hurry it. It's no race. Next. I think I'm right. Dan, you're not right. Try and put yourself back into line between the 2 of us. Try and face the front, and that weapon should be more square onto your shoulder. You happy with that? It's just not off at an angle. The training is going very well, actually. The problem is my lack of German. I could probably do a great deal better if I could do the whole thing in English. But I'm trying to learn a completely new foot drill. What we'll then do is we'll then go to stand at ease. And I need someone to remind me, stand at ease. Ruk, oi, yes? Rut, oi, ruet, oich.
Rührt
Oich, oich.
euch ist gut.
Rut, oich. Ruet, oich.
Yes.
Right, stand at ease. Which is rucht, oich. Like that. Comfy? If anybody knows me, they'll tell you that I always have problems with foot drill. I learn it quite slowly, but trying to learn a new foot drill combined with orders in a foreign language is proving quite taxing. I've done it again. It's so easy, okay? Good. Happy? Good. Now we're going to get wet. Squat, recover your arms. Normally the NCOs are standing a long way away, shouting orders from undercover just like this, and everybody gets more and more fed up. But it's a way of getting the soldiers ready for being messed around, because it's going to happen in action. And they're going to get wet and they're going to get miserable. So there's no point keeping everybody dry and comfy and hoping that war would work out to be nicely fought indoors in nice dry days. It's not like that. So the sooner the soldiers get used to it, the better. Pulse! Squat. Bad weather. Return to your quarters. We go again. We're actually in the town of Rendsburg, and Rendsburg is where the Reserve Regiment 213 originally was formed from local men. The people that we found just north of Ypres were from the regiment, therefore from this area, but more specifically they're from, well, at least one of them was from number 5 company. And in fact, if you come here, we've managed to match this rather well. That is the number 5 on the original button, dug up near Ypres. And that's our replica. That may actually be a real one, but it hasn't been in the ground for 90 years. So it's a single company of about 200 men from this area.
There's a fair bit of curiosity. You can see people looking.
Yes.
They don't actually come and ask. It's not been too bad, actually, is it? It's looks which I was expecting. There wasn't any great angry mob chasing us around the square, which I was just a bit worried about. And yeah, it makes you feel the part a little bit to actually walk around the town in the correct costume. I mean, if you were doing house-to-house fighting,
Long marches on foot demands tough men and tougher boots.
you know, creep up to a corner without anyone knowing that you're around there. It's only when you swivel your foot you really feel how skiddy it is.
Yes, you've got irons on the heel, you've got them on the toe, and basically, you know, your boots will go on for on and on. And the only thing you're wearing out isn't the boot leather, you're wearing out the nails.
But sometimes even these boots could not survive the pounding they received.
Well, that's the heel of a boot, and the sole was here. The toe section is missing from the front here. There's part of it there, there's a piece of bone in it. Some sort of decorated plate. Look.
It's the brass plate which they had actually on the top of their leather helmets, spiked helmets, the classic one. Don't know which state this is. Looks like it could be Prussian. See the hobnails really quite clearly on that. We're wondering why on earth someone would actually put a helmet plate in their boot. It's a rather uncomfortable thing to have under your heel. Having now cleaned these boots out of soil, you can see part of his sock in here, but you can also see the heads of the hobnails actually come through the actual base of his boot. Now, number one shave.
Don't you dare.
Number one shave.
No hair.
No hair.
No.
It's definitely nails.
But the thing is, look on the bright side, if we take all your hair off, your pickle hawk will fit better.
No.
I see. Just around the outside. The big one will fit better. This sort of idea that everybody had incredibly short hair isn't true. As a fashion, certainly by 1916 with the British Army, where you have it really long on top and short at the side, so under a hat or a cap you can't see it. Not unlike you've got now. It's quite long. And if you look at it, I think some of the older men had really short hair, much more like Hindenburg, whereas the younger blokes like the hair a bit longer. Good. As far as possible, the army want you to be clean because it reduces the chance of infection. It gives you all sorts of problems if you are grubby. And it was enforced, so you would use your mess tin, you know, to have a wash. Start with your face, and then go to your armpits, and then feet, and then more personal after that. As far as you could do every day.
Would that be every morning then?
Every day, if you could do, yeah, every day.
What type of occupations would our three chaps have done in civilian life?
More likely to be heavy industry. There's steelworks around here. There's heavy engineering.
Agriculture.
Agriculture, yeah. What we saw on the way in there are farms. So some of them could have been farm labourers, you know, that kind of thing.
So they're used to heavy work.
I think all of them were. It occurred to me that some of the things that people say about the horrors of the war, like having, for example, to work in very dangerous conditions. Well, these guys are doing it all the time. I mean, if if you're working in a steel mill and you've got a retort of steel and someone falls into it, you push them under.
Didn't the anthropologists say they were short and muscular?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So from the bones we can tell they're fairly well built and probably used to manual labour.
So what she could tell from the muscle attachments, could she?
Yeah. If the bone's got large muscle attachments, it means they're obviously fairly muscular. So that's good enough evidence actually from the bones themselves to say that these three chaps would have been used to physical labour.
The men belonged to the 213th Reserve Regiment, Prussians in distinct Pickelhaube helmets, a unit formed only 1 month after war began. The unit was based in Rendsburg, where no man's land are starting their journey. It's a steel town built on heavy industry that was critical to the German war effort, providing work for local men.
We're actually on the Hochbruck Bridge, which spans the Kiel Canal, which was built just before the bridge was built. And for anybody in the town, in fact, for the town itself, it becomes the symbol of the area, is this bridge has become so famous. I think going down is going to be worse than going up. Absolutely. The view is going to be fantastic. I was thinking about our workers. I mean, if they were farm labourers, this would have been absolutely staggering to look at it from a distance. If they were in the steel industry, well, probably some of the steel that they made went into the structure, but they might have been construction workers. the guys that came up here and built this. And if they'd taken part in that monumental bit of engineering, looking down at the canal, which is again monumental, looking at their navy going through it, they would have had this supreme feeling of confidence, which I think is what we get in the German army in 1914. That's better.
Oh,
Wow.
wow, what a view.
Look at the shipping containers on that. They look
And
tiny.
you can't even lose your helmet over the side.
This canal is built to get their fleet from one side of Germany to the other. It all says basically preparations for war. It's almost inevitable. I mean, just thinking about it, we're up here being saying, isn't this incredible? It's what, 2005 now. This bridge was finished in what, 1913. And it's just, I mean, presumably damaged during the Second World War, but this is an incredible piece of engineering. And I suppose if you were here, what, 1914, you'd have been able to see all the steelworks going, glowing in the dark, all the sulphurous
You
fumes.
would have seen the horizon would have been covered with
Absolute-
smoke, wouldn't it,
Yeah.
coming up from the factory.
And it's men working hard in heavy industry, steam trains, the navy. Germany must have looked unstoppable, you think about it.
The remains of 3 German soldiers found in the trench in northern Belgium near Ypres have been traced back to a reserve regiment, the 213th. In September 1914, these men were called up with no choice about their service for what the Kaiser said would be a war that would be over before the leaves fell from the trees. Now the men from no man's land are retracing their journey, boarding a train that would take them to Belgium and the Western Front. To Ypres, from where the men whose route they're following never returned.
The white flower symbolises, I guess, peace or purity, and they would have been given to us, to the soldiers, by their loved ones before they left. Sometimes in wreaths, sometimes just small flowers that they put in their hats or in their top buttons, just as a farewell gift.
Oh, you're bust. 19. Oh,
17.
yes. For once, I win.
Right, well, basically what I've got is some small change. It's about right, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's actually the exact coin, or one of the exact coins, Belgium coins, that we found in the purse of our 3 soldiers up at Big Shotter. You get these mats of cloth or leather all pushed together and flattened, and you have to literally, they're like a book, you do have to look between every little leaf, because you can get stuff that's tucked in between them. And with this piece of leather I thought, well, this looks a little bit suspicious, it could well be a purse. And when you open it up, you can see that still inside you've got the coins as they were some 90 years ago.
Fantastic. Oh, look at that.
First time they've seen light of day for 90 years.
Isn't that amazing? Just small change. Is that the
I
ones with the holes in?
I think Mark has said that the ones with the holes in are probably Belgium. So they're using
makes sense.
local currency.
Yeah.
But they're very distinctive because they've got the hole in the middle, there's no mistaking them.
Yeah.
We couldn't actually read very clearly what they were.
Well, that's what it is.
But we were told by Mark de Waal they were Belgium, and this is definitely the right size and it's got the hole in the middle. Now we've been very kindly lent an original letter from a German soldier. His name is Wilhelm. He was in the 215th Reserve Infantry Regiment, which means he was actually next door to the 213th Reserve Infantry, who our 3 chaps came from, on the front line. So they're actually there together, side by side. And this letter was written to his fiancée in October 1914, as he was travelling to the front. They're obviously in very high spirits as they chugged through the countryside, looking out the windows as it went by. The weather was good, like I said, and it was in autumn, and he was saying that the autumn colours were out. What's particularly nice is, he describes Belgium as they enter. Belgium, but what a beautiful country it is with the rolling hills. What these words say is very much, I think, what our three soldiers probably would have been feeling as well. And the general feeling is upbeat. Everyone's singing as they cross the border, they're singing in German, and it's all like a large party. They're all quite happy, it's an adventure.
Feels pretty good. It's exciting. I feel very comfortable in all this gear. Now that we've got all the webbing on and the pack and the helmet, I really feel the part. I feel great. And in the train on this beautiful day is amazing. I don't know where we're going, what our final destination is, but with the other lads, I feel really good, really confident.
You know, back there is home, and you're going into the unknown that way, and everything you know and love that's dear to you is back there. And although you're going to a great adventure with your new mates, there's still a part of you that wants to go back home.
In the first weeks of the war, 11,000 trains ran round the clock, taking millions of German soldiers to the front. But they stopped at the Belgian border where tracks had been destroyed. So the Germans marched into Belgium, pushing through territory they were already calling the New Germany. On October the 19th, 1914, the men of the 213th arrived in the small Belgian town of Staden, following in the footsteps of the 215th. The story goes that on arrival they were besieged by gunfire coming from the houses that surrounded them, fired on, as they thought, by the local townsfolk. But Andy Robertshaw thinks otherwise.
In your letter, it says they were being fired up by townspeople.
Yeah.
From the sound of the French reports, it's the French army firing at them.
Yeah.
As the Germans advanced under fire, the French pulled out, packing up their machine guns, but leaving the spent shells behind. With no opposing army in sight, the Germans assumed the locals had been shooting at them.
So when the Germans come in, lots of spent cases, evidence of people shooting, who's here? The townspeople, no, not French soldiers.
They get the blame for it.
So they get the blame for it. And in some ways it makes a horrible logic, isn't it?
The contents of the letter written by Wilhelm reveals what happened next and how the German soldiers took revenge.
Look, doesn't that letter mention that they spend the night in the fields? And nobody gets shot, although there's lots of bullets all the time.
Well, they say they arrived about 12 o'clock at midnight, and they went into the town and were fired on from all sides.
Yeah.
And they stopped to look where the fire was coming from. They say it was from the houses.
Which it would be.
Yeah. And then basically they torched the place.
Really?
So they go around burning the houses down, and then, like you say, they retired back out because they didn't have enough men to hold it. And so he says, and then they camped in a meadow.
Yeah.
And they were surrounded by the burning town, basically. And come the morning, they muster and go in fast to do the town properly.
Yeah.
And this time round, they go from door to door, breaking into the houses, where they find local occupants terrified, a lot of them. And he actually mentions that some of them are on their knees. And he mentions that a lot of them are just killed outright, just like that.
It's just the men, is it, they're killing?
They're killing the men. He says he couldn't do it. Wilhelm says he couldn't do it, but he says it's happening. But he says he felt sorry for the women and children who were terrified, but none of them were injured by their side.
It's their first ever experience of warfare. They're now going from being reservists called up a few weeks earlier to now being in battle, and that experience of combat is confusing, it actually is difficult to make sense of, and there's no clear enemy. So what happens then is, to a certain extent, either the officers lose control or the men themselves make decisions that perhaps that they weren't in a position to be fully informed about. Either way, it ends up with civilians being killed.
The invading Germans were gaining a reputation for barbarism, burning towns, executing civilians, raping and pillaging as they advanced. A meeting with the town registrar confirms the regiment's presence in the town and reveals the shocking truth of what happened on Black Monday, October the 19th, 1914, the day the German soldiers arrived.
And these two were the archaeologists that were among the people that found the Germans. But that's why we're here.
Okay. I have one of your fellows here also. It was a real 213.
That's right.
That's right.
There we are.
That's a list of the German war graves here in Staden.
Right.
And we see that there was...
The registrar has a list of German war graves in the town, which includes men from the 213th, proving conclusively they were there.
So that actually shows, because we've been talking about Wilhelm,
yes,
who came here and describes this place in his letter. He's from the 215th.
Yes, which is next door to
so that's
these.
Proof that our boys were here.
Yes.
On the Monday, the 19th,
yeah,
we call it Black Monday.
Right.
Because in Roeselare, they shot a lot of civilians there. And also in Staden, because we have the proof here, that's all civilians who were kept by the Germans as hostage. I found it in the archives.
Wow.
Nice to see,
we've just seen those names, haven't we, on the memorial. We counted 47.
There's a woman there.
Also a young boy.
Yes.
The parish priest also.
It's amazing in these cases. It always seems to the parish priest that that and the mayor seem to be the people that suffer first. Yes.
So Wilhelm was wrong.
Well, Wilhelm, I think, was putting a bit of a gloss in his letter,
saying that none of the women and children were hurt.
That's not
back to his letter to his fiancée. Yeah. He writes that none of the women and children were hurt, and we thought to ourselves,
a lot of soldiers didn't write it.
It's not the sort of thing you would want to tell your fiancée.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's putting those faces to some of the. We arrived in this town, and we knew that it was going to be, you know, an odd thing to do. But now, having seen the memorial, heard more about it, and seen the images, you can't say anything.
The hostages included children, women, and the parish priest. Civilians, the registrar says, were used by the soldiers as human shields, then murdered.
The thing that struck us was just the number of people, there's 47, and then putting names to faces or faces to names was something else.
At least 3 women in the photos.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing was, I mean, you were saying that the Wilhelm in his letter says, you know, that the women weren't killed.
Yeah.
And he seems to suggest they were killed sort of in the heat of action. Was what we're hearing is that they were used as a human shield. So if just killing people, you know, because you think they've been shooting at you is reprehensible, the human shield thing.
Well, this is after the event. They've rounded these people up, marched them off, and then used them as a shield, and then shot them.
So you've got, but what you've got is now we've now had a different account of the events. Wilhelm's letter says that it's house-to-house fighting.
Yes, that's right.
That women and children aren't hurt, but you could forgive a few soldiers maybe for shooting an odd woman in the heat of battle, bursting through a door, seeing a figure and firing.
Yeah.
But we're hearing here a totally different story. So these people are rounded up, marched down the road and then shot.
It's very, very strange, to be honest, to be wearing a uniform that is the same as the men who were here in 1914. It's what the uniform represents is what makes it disturbing to me, because it was an atrocity. And it doesn't matter why it happened, it did. It's a historical fact. And in some ways it's completely explicable. But at the same time, the death of civilians in war is far, far worse than the death of soldiers. On the whole, soldiers expect it to happen. For the civilians, that they don't.
Wilhelm's letter says after the shootings, the Germans camped on the outskirts of the town. Staying true to their journey, No Man's Land are doing the same.
How about that bit there?
Yeah, this is good.
That's fairly good, isn't it? It's fairly soft. There isn't much poo in it.
It's a very similar situation here, like the 3 soldiers we found on the archaeological excavation. They may well have camped in this very field. And it would have been a scene very similar to this, except a lot more of them. 200, 300 men in a field like this.
Rinse that out first, hang on.
Go on.
Get a little
There, tiny bit in there.
rinse that out.
Oh my God. We're going to eat this stuff?
So what, show me. That's fine.
Oh God. I was hoping you were going to say that's gone off.
Open it up a bit more. Don't be a whingy.
Last night I had calamari. Tonight I've got dog's food. I wish I'd have said that there.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Oh God, it's giving birth. Oh God, what's that? It's a penis.
Is that?
I can see why the Germans went in there in a bad mood the next day.
As night falls, the mood becomes more somber. Tomorrow they go to the front. The last leg of their trek, next stop Ypres, where the first trenches were dug, where trench warfare was born, and our 3 soldiers died. When the men of the 213th Regiment reached Ypres in October 1914, they were part of a new wave of German troops.
Come in. Pack up first.
250,000 strong, the plan was to capture Paris, destroy the French and British armies, then turn on Russia in the east. But the plan failed.
Once they start shooting, we'll have more incentive.
The French held their ground. They fought ferociously and stuck fast. The Germans had no choice but to dig in where they could.
Our German soldiers arriving here would have known shrapnel bursts overhead, would have told them, dig quickly. The quicker you dig, the safer you are. The saying was throughout the war, sweat saves blood. The more you sweat now, the safer you'll be when the attack comes in, when the artillery opens fire. You're going to be able to get your arse down as well. Being shot in the arse has been as bad as being shot anywhere else. Just keep digging it out.
No Man's Land are reliving the experiences of the German soldiers whose remains they found in these very fields.
I'm digging this temporary trench, this scoop, which has got me a length of my body. I haven't got time to dig a deep trench because I'm going to get shot at. So it's just enough to be my length, cover my body, and all the stuff that I dig up goes in front of me. Take out a little space so I can see the enemy, and I can get my gun in position and then fire at them, but still be protected. And then hopefully one of us can give covering fire whilst the other 2 continue to dig. But I'm about there. Just I need a little bit more off.
When they first came here 5 months earlier, No Man's Land's mission was to find the first trenches ever dug for the Great War.
If you look across there, you can see the guy standing up in the trench, and you can see the guy to the left crouched down. So you look at the silhouette against the horizon. Yeah, so you need to get down low so that you effectively don't become a target for small arms fire or artillery.
Records showed that the first trenches were dug here. Shallow scrapes hastily hollowed out under fire in a war that was still about movement, but that would soon become entrenched.
We've got groups of men in little scrapes, 2 or 3 men in each trench, and it's not continuous. The the Germans are advancing. The pressure of the advance pushes this lot back. They pull back across the other side of the field, and there, instead of making little scrapes, they decide to make a stand, and they gradually join up the scrapes till they've got a continuous trench. And suddenly you've got a position where you've got a trench that people can move up and down on, and instead of just sitting in a hole. And you've moved from field combat to trench combat. It's the birth of trench warfare.
The 213th Reserves who were fighting this part of the line eventually pushed back the French and took over their trenches. They were determined to hold on to their advantage, so they dug in deep, improved and reinforced.
Well, we're dealing with a sandbag here. Mostly we just have the marks of the sandbag, not the textile preserved. So this is very valuable, I think. It's also very difficult to recover it as a whole. We'll try, but we're not sure whether it's going to work or not.
Try and go in right below it and put your fingers to.
Yeah. So.
She's there, right?
Yeah.
Hang on.
We've got it. All right. Yeah, yeah. Woo! Yes, we've got it.
She's there. Fingers down.
Look, what a beautiful sandbag.
Impressive.
Do you want that again? 2/3 full.
Hang on,
Is that 2/3 full?
Yeah,
Choke
that's
round the
2/3.
outside. That's it. Right, wait for it. Now, remember what I told you. You see me showing. Good, out of the way. Fantastic. We know from what we did before with the archaeology just the other side of the road that this is where trenches began. This is the line on which the French armies stopped the German assault in October 1914. They were then pushed back. When they were pushed back, the Germans came in and improved the system. And in fact, what you can see and what we're reconstructing now, the archaeology shows us firstly earth, very shallow scrapes just out of the earth, then them all joining up to give us what we now know as a trench system. And what we're digging here is doing this within a few yards of where it really happened. In fact, just a couple of minutes ago, as we were working, we weren't doing archaeology as such, but we found this, which is just the base of a German spiked helmet, the Pickelhaube, which says that somebody was here doing exactly the same as we were doing, at exactly the same depth, wearing the same uniforms.
No, one more. You can imagine a whole line of them, like we are dressed, you know, with the grey trousers and the blue shirts and the braces, all the way along there, except here, digging in like that. And our three were probably amongst that group of men.
It was at this place that the Germans dug deep, marking the birth of trench warfare for the Great War. So when No Man's Land found the remains of their 3 German soldiers on this site 5 months earlier, they knew it meant they were at the right spot, at the very place where trench warfare had begun.
Whoops.
Digging deeper below the German fortifications, they hoped to find the original trench layout, a remnant of the very first ever dug for modern warfare, something that changed it forever. No Man's Land succeeded in locating one of the very first trenches dug at the beginning of the Great War.
This is something that no one's ever seen before. People have done archaeology of the Great War and they've looked at 1915, 16, 17. Normally it's late war. This, which looks so much like a 3-person fire pit, very, very, very crudely made, is the first time anything like this ever been seen. But everything in here is early war. It cannot be 1917 or 18. This is, you know, one of the very first trenches. Unbelievable. If we get rained on, we've got really wet gear. What we've done here is to build our replica of a trench of the type that would have been dug end of 14, beginning of 15, as trenches improved. It's got all the features that you should have in a trench. It's got a lower area which allows you to walk along without getting too exposed to enemy fire. You've then got the fire step that you can stand on to shoot, sleep on. You've got an area called the berm, which allows then, well, here you can see what's gone onto it, really to stop the earth falling back straight into your trench. And then the parapet, and the parapet we've been able to use sandbags. Germans were using basically any form of bed linen. It would have been much more variegated. This is very even.
Over the top.
Yeah.
But this is very much the sort of thing that they would have done literally just across in the field over there that's now ploughed. And so yeah, in a way we've come all the way from Rendsburg where they were, and we are literally, what, 20 metres away from their trench.
The whole basis of no man's land has been excavating trenches. It was never set up to find human remains. But when we find them, the idea of being able to identify them, to give them some humanity back is what it's about. We had the opportunity this time to go and see where they came from, follow their route, come back and stand here where the human remains were found. 3 casualties buried together. It seems that initially that they were all in the same space, so that says to me a shell hole or a grave prepared by German soldiers. But whoever buried them, it was very, very shallow. That says to me men in a hurry, men really under pressure to get their mates just underground. That's all they were doing. Not a proper burial.
Three nameless German soldiers and some innocent civilians died at the dawn of trench warfare. Fighting in trenches stalemated the war for 4 years, so no one got home before the leaves fell, and millions never got home at all.